Look eager and ready to start, so I'm going to move that House File 2015 be laid over for possible inclusion in an omnibus bill. Representative Listowicard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. House File 2015 provides a state response to the growing problem posed by the emerald ash borer infestation. We have learned a great deal about what communities in Minnesota are currently facing and what all of us are going to face as the EAB expands its range across the state. We have a number of communities on the eastern side of Minnesota, including metro area, who are already dealing with the expense of removing and replacing ash trees that make up a significant portion of urban canopy. This bill identifies jurisdictions that will be eligible to seek funding through the EAB response program to be administered by the Department of Natural Resources. The bill also indicates the type of work that will be appropriated for program funding. I have with me today a number of witnesses who can speak to this bill and answer any questions you may have. First, I have County Commissioner Victoria Reinhardt from Ramsey County.
Ms. Reinhardt.
Thank you. Yes, I am Victoria Reinhardt. I'm a member of the Ramsey County Board of Commissioners, and I currently serve as chair of the Partnership on Waste to Energy, which is Hennepin, Ramsey, and Washington counties. And I'm also here speaking on behalf of, in support of this bill on behalf of the Association of Minnesota Counties. I know that you're on a tight time frame, so I think you all know that emerald ash borer is a big problem. I'm just going to go with that. And that there are three categories, and I'm only going to touch on one then, is tree removal, tree replacement, and wood waste management. Counties in Minnesota are responsible for waste management, including trees, and so that's the part that I'm going to talk about. If you have questions about the other, I'm open for it. We estimate that in the metropolitan area, there will be over 1.67 million tons of wood waste requiring disposal as a result of emerald ash borer. And I know that there's been a lot of questions about, well, why is this different than Dutch elm disease of the 1960s, 70s, and 80s? And there's some big differences. One is that wood waste now cannot be buried in landfills. It's banned from there, nor can it be placed in the trash, and open burning is not allowed. There aren't very many markets for this, for use in products, but for mulch, I should say, but those are quite limited. So the most reliable way to currently manage wood waste is using biomass energy plants, which produce energy for heating and electricity. And this bill would support the necessary market. Without the reliable market for wood waste, we could see stockpiling, and that carries a big risk of spontaneous combustion, which is what happened when we had huge piles of Dutch elmwood disease or diseased Dutch elm. It burned in St. Paul and created hazardous smoke for many months. And there are just few legal ways to deal with it, and I think we can expect that there will be more illegal dumping and of the waste. So again, if you have more questions on this, I'd be happy to answer them, but right now I skipped over most of it and just would appreciate your support because we really need this. Counties cannot meet our goals for waste management without it, and this is a market that we need.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Craig Johnson with the League of Minnesota Cities. Also very grateful for the author bringing this bill forward and the committee taking the time to do it on a busy deadline schedule. The League very strongly supports this. I'm also here making comments on behalf of Hennepin County supporting it. They asked me to add their name to the list. The cities are the front line of where this pest is being dealt with right now. We've had some pretty extensive discussions in a number of committees. Just very briefly, in Minnesota right now, we have 17 counties that are under quarantine for emerald ash borer. That's every county in the east central part of the state and the southeastern part of the state, all of them. Martin County has just been added in the last year, and the southern third of St. Louis County, including the city of Duluth, is now under quarantine. So it is quickly becoming a statewide issue, and it will continue to spread. That's not going to stop based on what we do here. What is important is that this is a pest that if we do not slow it down, it can be financially impossible for our communities to deal with it. If you have a large percentage of the trees in your community, and you will hear about this later from one of our people who deals with urban forestry, you can have impossibly high costs that are suddenly hitting your city budget with no way to prepare for them. These trees die very quickly, and they are a real public safety risk when they do. And as I think people are aware, after the Dutch elm problems of the 70s, a significant portion of our boulevard trees and park trees were replaced with ash trees, and they will all eventually die from this beetle. So it's just a matter of trying to pace that out and potentially come up with some other solutions in the meantime. And for the next 5 years or so, the cities are where that's going to be happening. The real long-term issue, though, is our northern black ash forests, which are 900 million black ash trees and are a major part of the ecosystem of northern Minnesota that is what we're trying to defend right now and what we need to be ready to deal with before it becomes a crisis there. So that's why we bother doing this. That's why, even though it seems hopeless, it is something that we really do need to work on. Our cities are spending millions of dollars a year right now doing this on their own, and they're starting to fall behind. They can't keep up with the cost, and that's just dealing with the trees on public property without the ones that are on private land. So we need to deal with getting the inventory and planning done, getting the removal, replacement, and treatment of trees done where it's appropriate, and dealing with the disposal issues that the commissioner mentioned earlier. And we're going to need the state to be an active financial partner if we're going to pull this off. So we very much appreciate your attention to this, and thank you very much for the time. Happy to answer questions.
Any questions for the two testifiers?
We should have somebody.
Representative Lislegard, you have a few more?
We do. Forest Board Bo could make it, so I have a different testifier. And she's eager to be here.
You can introduce yourself.
Thank you. As you can tell, I'm not Forrest Bowe. My name's Amy K. Kerber. I work for the DNR Division of Forestry. So I want to thank Representative Lislegard for bringing this forward. It's a very important topic. As you all know, the threat is real and it is serious. You heard, this committee heard testimony, I believe, about a month ago on informational testimony about this issue. And you learned there, and I'll just remind you that statewide we have 1 billion ash trees in Minnesota. We have the largest population or amount of ash of any state in the country. We look at the community level, that means 1 in 5 of our community shade trees or trees in our communities are ash. Puts communities at the greatest risk, and they right now have the most immediate significant need. So we've heard from communities in this committee previously, and then the DNR has repeatedly heard over the last couple of years from our community partners that they need a couple of things. One of those is that they need to do tree inventories. Basically, they need to identify where their ash is and how much ash they have. They also need to develop ash management plans. And then they need the financial assistance to actually do these inventories, to make the plans and implement them. And implementing the plans means treating ash trees where appropriate, so preserving those trees for as long as makes sense for that community, removal and replanting. And then they also need sometimes technical assistance for doing this, as well as caring for the trees that they plant after those trees have been removed. Ultimately, if communities are not able to have the financial needs and technical assistance to manage the ash and emerald ash borer situation, they will have communities full of standing dead ash. And if these communities are not able to manage it, that means they've increased the risk of spreading emerald ash borer to neighboring communities and then onto the ash forests in our state, which will have much broader environmental effects and impacts for us all to deal with later. Under this bill, the DNR is able to provide the assistance and support to communities to get this work done. And we know that this approach is a way for Minnesota to spread the cost to address EAB over several years and more easily absorb its impacts over time. We look forward to working with the bill author and partners as this moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee members. My name is Karen Zumak, and I am the Director of Community Forestry for Tree Trust. I am also the president of the Minnesota Shade Tree Advisory Committee, the state's tree board. I've been here talking with you and various members of your colleagues to talk about emerald ash borer for the past 5 sessions. So I won't go too far into the details except that EAB is indeed a big problem. We know that trees have value in our communities. The U.S. Forest Service has put together a really fantastic benefits calculator that really gives us those benefits of those trees in our urban and community forests. So when we're talking about ash trees, we're talking about an 18-inch ash tree, and that's going to provide about $168 worth of benefits to that community each year. Those benefits include stormwater benefits, stormwater mitigation, urban heat island mitigation, carbon sequestration and avoidance by providing shade and cooling, all those things that you just never really attribute quantifiably to a tree. And those benefits only increase in value over time. So when we lose a large amount of trees in a short period of time, there are significant environmental impacts. So I thought for fun, what I would do is take a look at each one of your districts and pick out a community in each of your districts. I have the rapid assessment data that was put together by the Department of Natural Resources in 2010 that gives a community a pretty good snapshot of what they have in their urban and community forests. So these are trees that are mowed around. We're not talking about forested areas. So for the committee members sitting around the table, I only counted Minneapolis once. Didn't want to skew the results. We're looking at nearly 300,000 trees, ash trees, in communities across each of your districts. So together, combined, we're talking about 300,000 trees, just picking one community out of your districts. So every community in Minnesota will be impacted by this. Small communities, large communities. Some of those smaller ones have nearly 60% ash trees planted in their communities. Significant impact with very, very little support with a forestry department or a public works department. Replanting 2 generations. It takes 2 generations to restore the tree canopy and restore those benefits after an invasion like emerald ash borer. We need funding to help communities manage this pest. We can't wait any longer. We can't wait for the day when it shows up in the black ash swamps of northern Minnesota. We need this funding now so we can really plan and manage this in a way that no other state has been able to do. I welcome your questions. I'm happy to share the data from each of the communities that I picked for you if you're interested. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Any questions for the testifiers?
Okay.
Okay. Next testifier.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Stephen Huser and I represent Metro Cities. Metro Cities supports House File 2015 and would like to thank Representative Listlegard for carrying it. Metro Cities policy supports state funding to cities to address the local costs created by the emerald ash borer infestation. Many communities in the metro area are faced with growing costs related to combating the EAB infestation, and state sources of funding are needed to address this issue. Thank you for the opportunity to express our support for House File 2015.
Thank you. Any questions for the testifier? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to testify for or against the bill? Anyone in the audience? Representative Listlegard, any closing remarks?
Just real briefly that I didn't know a whole lot about this issue until they gave that presentation in environment policy, and it really opened my eyes that this is a issue that is not going away and that we need to be fully engaged. So I think it's a good bill, and I think that it needs to move forward. And in short, a wise man once said, this is a really good bill and you should support it.
Well, who's the wise man?
That guy.
Good advice. I will renew my motion that House File 2015 as amended. We didn't amend it. 2015 be laid over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. The bill is laid over. Thank you. Representative Claflin will assume the chair.
Take it easy on him now.
Chair Hansen, would you like to move your bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move that House File 1928 be recommended to be re-referred to the Ways and Means Committee with a re-referral to the Legacy Finance Division.
And Representative Hansen has the DE3 amendment. Representative Hansen, please present the amendment.
The DE amendment was posted yesterday. I'm going to go through a couple of things. I'd encourage folks to look at the 1928 original bill. The bill is about $260 million of funding from the Clean Water Fund, the Legacy Fund. Because of a decrease in the sales tax revenue, we had to cut about 1.5 million roughly from the that amount. And then the DE amendment changes approximately about 15 million reallocating dollars within the funds. I'm going to walk through kind of the changes. There should be a spreadsheet in your packet. The major changes are as follows. Forever Green was increased from 1.65 million a year to 5 million a year. The following items were removed: technical assistance, academic research and evaluation, and vegetative cover and soil health. This is in the Department of Agriculture. On line 2.29 and 2.30, that appropriation to increase monitoring for pesticides and pesticide degradates, the DE3 amendment provides for monitoring for microplastics and nanoplastics. I want to note that we provide a definition in the bill for microplastics and nanoplastic. It also requires a report of this appropriation detailing the results of the monitoring and the assessment. On line 4.7, the Agricultural Water Quality Certification Program, the DE3 amendment requires a report detailing outcomes achieved by the program. On line 5.13, the appropriation for testing private wells for pesticides, the DE3 amendment also requires testing for microplastics and nanoplastics. So throughout the DE, there are increased monitoring for microplastics and nanoplastics after the report that we heard approximately 2 weeks ago about increased plastics in our environment. There are no changes to the Public Facilities Authority. On the Pollution Control Agency, the groundwater assessment was increased from 1.182 million a year to 1.5 million a year, and also requires assessing for microplastics and nanoplastics. The appropriation for completing the statewide assessment of surface water quality was reduced 1.2 million for the second year. The following items were removed: accelerated implementation of MS4 permit requirements, 450,000, and a public information campaign. We require a report back to the legislature on outcomes associated with enhanced inspections and SSTS. On line 9.4, we add language clarifying the grants for upgrading water softener units are for public facilities. On line 9.13 through 9.27, there's the language defining microplastics and nanoplastics and requires the MPC to develop protocols for testing such. Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, the Forest for the Future was increased by $250,000 per year, requiring the Forest for the Future to be in the Mississippi Headwater watershed for water quality while preparing for climate change. The following item was removed in the Department of Natural Resources: color infrared imagery analysis, $650K. On line 10.4, for the Lake Index of Biological Integrity assessments, requiring assessments for microplastics and nanoplastics, and at least 50% of the assessments must be conducted in the metro area and in Rochester or Duluth. On line 10.11, when you're assessing for mercury, also requiring assessment for microplastics and nanoplastics. For the Board of Water and Soil Resources, targeted wellhead and drinking water protection was increased from 2.375 million a year to 5 million a year. It removes the reference to alternative management pools in the MDA nitrogen fertilizer management plan. The DEE3 also increases the appropriation for the technical evaluation panel to conduct at least 10 restoration evaluations by $32,000. The conservation, drainage, and management assistance was removed. Tillage and erosion transects were cut from 425 a year to 213 a year. $12.5 million in FY20 for the conservation reserve enhancement was removed. The second year of $7.5 million and the second year appropriation remains. On subdivision R on line 16.21, making changes that the appropriations for Bowser are available until June 30th, 2024. Removes language allowing grants to be extended if the admin department determines a longer duration is in the best needs of the state. Minnesota Department of Health increases the drinking water contaminants of emerging concern program by $7.542 million for the biennium, requiring developing and adopting at least 8 health risk limits, requiring preliminary report by January 15th that identifies health risk limits and water quality monitoring protocols to be implemented, surface waters to be tested, and the list of contaminants to test for, requiring a final report on the outcomes by 2022. The DE3 amendment also increases private well water supply protection by $150K a year and adding microplastics and nanoplastics. The DE3 amendment includes $1.39 million for grants or loans for inflow and infiltration reduction programs. The University of Minnesota, the DE3 removes the $343,000 appropriation for clean water return on investment pilot and clarifies the appropriation on stormwater BMP performance is for municipal stormwater practices. The Legislative Coordinating Commission is reduced from $15K to $9K. Legislative oversight, as similar to the Lessard-Sams bill that was passed, this requires a House and Senate Finance and Legacy Committee to convene a joint hearing to evaluate the effectiveness of the Clean Water Council and receive reports on the council from the legislative auditor no later than June 30th, 2020, and every 4 years. On line 21.5, a technical amendment I'd like to incorporate, I think, has to be Clean Water Fund, not the Outdoor Heritage Fund. Is that right, Ms. Taylor?
Madam Chair, members, yeah, it should be Clean Water Fund instead of the Outdoor Heritage Fund.
So I'd like to incorporate that into the DE3 amendment. Article 2 contains provision from Representative Fisher's House File 875, which updates and modifies the state's Clean Water Legacy Act and related provisions, which was heard in Environment and Natural Resources Policy and the Water Division. The fiscal note notes $175,000 savings from the Clean Water Fund to Bowser for the biennium. So by including the Article 2 and sending that to Representative Lilly's committee, then that $175,000 savings can be booked to the Clean Water Fund. So in general, what we did is the DE amendment adds for sampling for microplastics and nanoplastics in surface water and groundwater. It cuts the first year of CREP and reallocates that money to drinking water and also Forever Green. There are some other changes that I could go into detail that I referenced of the rationale why some of those were made, but that is the DE3 amendment, and I would move it with the incorporated change for the Clean Water Fund.
Are there questions from the members? Heinzman, Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of things. Number one, I'm not seeing it. I'm sure it's here somewhere. What is the reserve in the Clean Water Fund? Do we know that? Somebody in House Research probably does.
Madam Chair, Representative Heinzman, the statutory language requires a 5% reserve of the tax receipts from the last forecast. So this would leave a balance of $5,887,000 at the end of the biennium, which would be the 5% reserve. It can be found on line 98 of the spreadsheet. If that answered your question.
Representative Heinzman.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I know we're making a few changes here, and I'm assuming there's been some communication with the agencies affected, and we don't need them to pile in, but just confirm, please, to Mr. Chair, that there's been some communication with those folks.
Chair Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Representative Heinzman. Yes, there has been communication with the agencies. I talked over the weekend with the Commissioner of DNR, the Executive Director of the Board of Water and Soil Resources. I talked with the Pollution Control Agency Commissioner, and I played telephone tag with the Commissioner of Agriculture by text and by phone.
Representative Heinzman.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So just confirming everybody was basically happy. They're not running down to say they have an issue of any kind, so I'm assuming they are.
Chair Hansen.
Madam Chair, I wouldn't say that they are happy, but I think they understand what we were doing, and I'm happy for them to testify and express their concerns. I'm sure they have some.
Representative Backer.
Madam Chair and Chair, you talked about being in touch with the agencies and so forth. Appreciate that. Have you been in touch on the Senate side at all? Have you been in touch with them, or don't know where that's coming, or seeing what's coming down the path on that?
Chair Hansen.
Madam Chair and Representative Backer, I'm always looking forward to conference committees, but this would be Representative Lilly's conference committee that would be working with the Senate. So our task here is moving it forward, and I have not been in contact with them.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, or is there anyone in the audience who would like to testify on the DE3 amendment? And please introduce yourself for the record.
Good evening, Madam Chair. My name is Paul Gardner. I'm the administrator for the Clean Water Council. The Clean Water Council is a group of 17 members appointed by the governor and makes recommendations for how to use the Clean Water Fund. There are certainly some intriguing ideas here, but the council has asked me to express that it's standing by its recommendations that are in the bill as originally introduced. It's not that there aren't some interesting ideas here. We don't have a monopoly on good ideas. But with 24 hours, we haven't been able to really parse out how all the interlocking parts will interact if you take one out and put it somewhere else. I'm not saying it couldn't work, but at the next committee stop, we'll probably have a more thorough analysis for that. This does reflect about a 9% change, or 9% of the recommendations are being removed and reinserted in different places. I will say there's only one new line item here. It's not as if there's ideas being brought out of the ether, so that's fine. And Representative Hansen has expressed some interest in some of these ideas. And as someone who's had experience in solid waste, the issue on plastics is intriguing. I don't know the technology behind the testing, but it's of interest. I just wanted to leave you and say that the governor's office did give me a call this morning and said that Governor Walz expressed interest in keeping the recommendations as submitted. But this is a different branch of government, so you may do as you will. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Lewick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the areas I'm curious about, looks like we're going to make a significant adjustment to the amount of dollars that's available for CREP. Does that have a federal matching implication? If it does, do we have any numbers on that?
Chair Hansen.
Madam Chair and Representative Lewick, the state of Minnesota has been very generous in matching the federal allocation for CREP. I know that Mr. Hagermeyer has a spreadsheet of the appropriations where we've provided Clean Water Fund, Outdoor Heritage Fund, Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund, bonding dollars, Outdoor Heritage Fund, bonding dollars, and then more bonding dollars. So roughly, and Mr. Hagermeyer could correct me if I'm wrong, we've allocated or appropriated about $140 million, and by the House estimate, we've expended about 30. Mr. Hagermeyer.
Mr. Hagermeyer.
Madam Chair, Representative Hansen, I do have a tracking sheet of all the appropriations that have gone to the CREP match. It's been $141,291,000 to date. Of it was originally $150 million match. That's $175 for the round out, so there'd be about $34 million remaining. The program has a 2.3 to 1 match from the federal funds to state funds. Based on information that the Board of Water and Soil Resources provided to the committee earlier this year, I think they've funded about 12,000 acres, and as an estimate, I think the state share is probably around $30 million on that, but Bowser could certainly correct me if that's a different number.
Representative Lewick.
Just, a follow-up. So if we, it's pretty, it would look like we're going to leave at least some federal dollars potentially on the table for now. Is there another place where that's going to be made up, or are we just going to forego those federal matching dollars, I guess?
Representative Hansen.
Madam Chair and Representative Lewick, there is no end date on the CREP agreement. So I think the key point here is if we've appropriated $140 million and we've spent about 30, that's why I provide this. I took from the first year to give time for catch-up. I think we had testimony in the committee that because of the delay at the Farm Bill expiration and because of the government shutdown, that there was a pause in terms of things. So providing for the second year of the appropriation would allow the Board of Water and Sewer Resources and landowners to catch up. And there is not the potential, in my understanding, because there is no cap of like this must be met by January 1st of 2020, that we have the time to either do this with clean water, outdoor heritage, or bonding. And we just, with the appropriation, the GO bond correction that occurred, that was 10 million more that just was appropriated in the last 2 weeks.
Representative Lewick.
Just, I'm never comfortable that the federal government's going to continue on as is, and so, I mean, it would, you know, they could take a sharp turn one direction or the other real quick, and, but at any rate, well, thank you, I appreciate that explanation.
Chair Hansen, any comments?
I think there's another testifier.
And Representative Backer had a question as well.
Yeah, and then one more question, or two more questions here. I represent a huge area of agriculture, Madam Chair and Chair. What is the reasoning behind line 5 and line 6, the depletion of that to 0 on your author amendment there, Chair?
Chair Hansen.
Representative Backer, are you on the DE?
I am. If you look on, I'm on our spreadsheet, Clean Water. If you're looking over to number 5, technical assistance, the Clean Water Council recommendation had 1.6, 1.6, 3.2, and we have dashes, dashes, dashes. And then academic research, because I do know that research has played an important role in keeping clean water. We also scratched that out on the author amendment, and that's line 6 there, Chair.
Chair Hansen.
Madam Chair, and so I think, members, if you look at the actual bill, it would be on page 3.21, the 1.625 the first year and 1.625 the second year. So within the ag world, we're providing the money to Forever Green and targeting the Forever Green to work on drinking water projects as well as the research. The 1.625 the first year says for technical assistance, research and demonstration projects on proper implementation of best management practices, and more precise information on non-point contributions to impaired waters for grants to support on-farm demonstration of agricultural practices. So these are demonstration projects and assessment and research versus doing the research for Forever Green and implementing those practices through the Forever Green program. On line 3.30, the 6.663 thousand is for the second year to research to quantify and reduce agricultural contributions to the impaired waters and for developing and evaluating BMPs to protect and restore water resources. So we have developed a lot of BMPs. The program where the dollars are going, again, is into programs, projects in the ground for drinking water. So in general, there's a lot more drinking water projects with easements for wellhead protection. That's where those dollars are. So we need a choice of, rather than continuing the demonstration projects and BMP development and BMP research, to do actual projects in the ground and targeting those for drinking water.
Representative Backer.
No further questions. Thank you. Right now.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to quickly check, is the Department of Ag here? Could they speak to this?
Thank you. Please introduce yourself for the record. And Chair, Representative Heinzman, did you have a specific question for them?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm assuming no agency is going to say, no, we can't use the money, but just in case, I'd like to better understand where 6.7 million would be potentially going with the Forever Green program and how you guys are geared up or not geared up to do that.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Susan Stokes. I serve as Assistant Commissioner at the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. And I'm going to ask our Assistant Division Director, Dan Stoddard, to answer the question specifically about the program. But what I would say is similar to what Mr. Gardner said, which is we've had 24 hours notice. And we are happy to work with the author on this. But as of right now, we would want to stay with the governor's recommendations and the governor's budget. But Mr. Stoddard can explain a little bit more about the two programs if you'd like to respond on that.
Madam Chair, my name is Dan Stoddard. I'm Assistant Director of the Pesticide and Fertilizer Management Division. And as Assistant Commissioner Stokes said, I think we need a little bit of time to digest the changes. In general, we had requested an increase of $100,000 in Forever Green for implementation on the ground, and I think the recommendation now is $2.5 million. And then we did lose, or the proposal does delete our funding for two different areas, research and technical assistance. Both of those areas we think do provide value. Technical assistance in particular is really the primary funding source for clean water funds to provide information on agricultural practices to demonstrate and evaluate them in the field with the ag community.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That actually really helps. I'm trying to better understand, and that really shines a light on kind of some of the things that are going to potentially disappear here. What happens to those programs since they're eliminated from this line item? Do those programs just completely cease to exist? Are there other funding mechanisms available? What happens to all those involved?
Mr. Stoddard?
Madam Chair, most of those programs appear like they will not exist anymore. Most of the funding for those demonstration projects is through the Clean Water Funds. We do have a lot of partnerships through these, so there might be some opportunity for partners to pick up some of those activities, but a great deal of the funding is through Clean Water funding.
Representative Heinzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Follow up. So just to be clear, those partnerships potentially could go forward, or whether there are going to be folks that are left kind of high and dry?
Mr. Chair, or Madam Chair, I guess we need to look at this a little closer to really understand the implications.
Representative Backer.
You're talking about these. Could you give us some examples of some of these partnerships that may go away and vanish? I'm sorry, Chair.
Madam Chair, Representative, technical assistance funds a number of activities that we use. Two primary things that we do is that we work with the ag community to demonstrate best management practices and other practices. And we also do extensive edge of field monitoring, which is a pretty high-tech thing where we actually have hydrologists install monitoring systems at fields across the state so that we can evaluate the actual impacts from different practices. That information then is used in field days. We have farmers come out. We work frequently in cooperation with a local unit of government or with Discovery Farms. They're farmer-led work groups. And then we look at the practices. They can actually see the benefit of the practice, and it's really a wonderful opportunity to learn about what the practice does. And then we also have, as an outcome from that, very accurate information on what that practice will do in the environment. So that information is really hard to get, and we would use that information in modeling. The data is provided to other agencies, and they use the information to make sure that the assumptions that go in to the watershed restoration and protection strategies, or the One Watershed, One Plan strategies, is based on real-world data in Minnesota in different parts of the state. So we think the information and the effort is important and useful.
Representative Backer.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. And I've been at a few of those, so I would agree with you that practices are changed, and I'm concerned that we're zeroing that out in this. My next question that I have is on the academic research. What would be an example of a program or two that will disappear with it not being funded by Clean Water, potentially? I know you don't have a crystal ball.
Mr. Stoddard.
Madam Chair, Representative, so Each year, we come up with a new request for proposals. Those change. We have an interagency advisory team that makes suggestions. What academic research does, it provides accurate information on new and emerging practices and fills information gaps. So it's going to be a little different each year, but the information that we've generated through academic research has been really foundational for a lot of the impaired waters efforts in the state. For example, we've developed an Ag BMP handbook, which identifies the benefits of different practices. That handbook now is kind of the standard that's used in every impaired waters study to evaluate practices. One of the things that we're proposing is to do the same kind of handbook for groundwater. We also fund the Clay County Ag Drainage Site. So there's 7 different replicated assessments of ag drainage up in Clay County. So we have accurate information on the benefits and the environmental impacts of drainage in the Red River Valley. So I think there's a lot of good work that's been done through academic research.
Representative Backer?
Madam Chair, thank you. And I appreciate you sharing that because that is a concern. I would ask that the governor's office would do what they can to keep those because we know that roughly 20% of our state's income is from agriculture, and that makes a huge impact on our environment. So I appreciate what you're sharing and would ask that the governor's office would fight for those programs through clean water. So thank you.
If there are no other questions, and there was another testifier. Chair Hansen, you had a comment?
Madam Chair, and just I would encourage folks to look in their packet. There's an actual definition from the Constitution, and the Constitution says that if you've got a chance to take a look at it, 33% of the receipts shall be deposited in the Clean Water Fund and may be spent only to protect, enhance, and restore water quality in lakes, rivers, and streams, and to protect groundwater from degradation. At least 5% of the Clean Water Fund must be spent only to protect drinking water sources. So that's at least, not a cap. I would encourage folks to look at the constitutional language.
And for the next testifier, please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris Elverum with the Minnesota Department of Health, and I'm here also representing the 6 state agencies and Met Council who receive the Clean Water Funds. And similar to what Mr. Gardner and Commissioner Stokes said, we haven't had a lot of time to assess this. There are some significant changes, and the original bill was developed through a collaborative process with the Clean Water Council and the agencies, and the agencies still continue to support the governor's recommendations. However, as they said, there's some good ideas in here, and we'd be happy to work with the author to try to accommodate some of those and still maintain our programs that have been developed over many years. Thank you.
Are there questions for this testifier? Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to testify for or against the bill or the amendment? Representative Hansen moves the DE3 amendment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted.
I would move House File 1928 as amended be re-referred to the Ways and Means Committee with a re-referral to the Legacy Finance Division.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Aye.
The motion prevails. We are adjourned.